For years, Finn McKenty was famous in the YouTube music scene for his popular channel, the Punk Rock MBA. So there was a predictable shock in December 2024 when the influencer officially announced that he was leaving the platform behind. Since 2017, McKenty played the role of an authentic punk, metal, and hardcore music lover who was lucky enough to turn his passion into a career. Born in 1978 in Snohomish, Washington, McKenty started frequenting local hardcore and punk shows at age 12. He had a special love for underground bands, even making zines, which were generally non-commercial, small-scale DIY magazines, to introduce fans to smaller subgenres that music critics were ignoring. So how did he rise from these humble, earnest roots, establish a thriving YouTube platform based on his supposed love of music, and wind up now best known as a gigantic grifter?
So Finn McKenty is a fraud.
Stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Band History. Well, it's not really a band, but I'm not making new branding just for this. There are a lot of dramatic ways to leave YouTube, but Finn McKenty, the creator behind the Punk Rock MBA, was not really one of them. He shuttered the popular channel at the end of 2024 after producing more than 370 videos over 7 years. More importantly, while formally announcing his departure in a December 2024 interview with metalcore TikTok influencer Jesse Lee, McKenty shocked his fans by saying,
"I don't really have any interest in music, so I was just doing it for the money, and I hit my financial goals, and so there's really just no reason for me, like I don't have to keep doing it."
Seems pretty cynical. I first learned about the Punk Rock MBA when his video on the rise and fall of System of a Down from December of 2023 appeared on my recommended page. My first impression was not a particularly positive one. To be honest, I found his content kind of lazy, or maybe just too heavily tied to the formats that felt underwhelming. There was an assembly line vibe to his work. It really felt like these videos had just been churned out without much deep thought, much less love. And to me, that's kind of disrespectful to the fans of the bands that he talks about. It's like we heard McKenty, but he heard McDonald's. But that said, his claims that he never even cared about the music that he spent so many years analyzing for fans, and that he was only in the YouTube game for the money, struck me as completely bizarre. Though I wasn't a devoted subscriber, whenever I did watch the Punk Rock MBA, I saw someone who appeared to be at least passionate about the music, and perhaps even more so about the music industry. And if you look back over the history of the channel, especially at his videos about lesser-known bands, he seems sincere in his own fandom of these groups. So his abrupt departure and sudden change in attitude baffled me, and the YouTube world at large. I wanted to unravel the mystery behind the abrupt demise of the Punk Rock MBA, and the strange behavior of the channel's founder. But first, let's take a closer look at the story of the man himself, Finn McKenty. Again, I'm not changing the branding just for this one video. I know I've cast some doubt on McKenty's credibility, but for his early history, I'm gonna have to rely on his own account. So let's look at a 2023 video in which he fact-checked his own Wikipedia page.
Okay, the first part is wrong. My first name is not Finley. I should edit that. What is the source on this? My name is not Finley. It's Finnegan McKenty. So the very first word of my Wikipedia page is a lie.
As I mentioned, Finnegan got his start as an adolescent zine maker who focused on promoting niche subgenres and bands, like power violence and grindcore. His work earned praise from the broader zine community for the quality of his interviews, photographs, and graffiti art. After graduating from the University of Cincinnati, McKenty started working in industrial design, where he consulted on big brand projects.
I did stuff for a lot of different products. For example, Swiffer and Febreze were like the two biggest things I worked on, I would say, at that time, which was awesome. I really enjoyed doing that work, surprisingly, but I really liked it.
He'd find ways to incorporate music into his design work, like when he made branded videos, lifestyle magazines, and CDs in collaboration with action sports companies like Quicksilver. In 2009, he started working in product design at Abercrombie & Fitch, where he specialized in designing shirts for women. But he hadn't left the underground music world behind. He simultaneously pursued his youthful love of music criticism by contributing to heavy metal blogs like Terrorizer and Decibel. In 2009, McKenty launched a comedy website called Stuff You Will Hate under the pseudonym Sergeant D. The site earned its cult reputation for its satire about heavy metal and hardcore punk subcultures. Though the website isn't up anymore and not accessible on the Wayback Machine, contemporaneous accounts suggest that Sergeant D's divisive opinions and outspoken style attracted plenty of attention. What's more, this work actually lends some interesting context to McKenty's larger trajectory. In 2012, Vice described the site's mission as such. Sergeant D has taken it upon himself to be the bigger brother to an entire generation of dorks who take life too seriously. His observations about youth culture are so insanely spot on that it's impossible not to take the life advice he dispenses. As Sergeant D, McKenty advised scene kids not to go vegan, not to turn straight edge, and above all, heeding the wise words of Blink-182, not to take themselves too seriously. In his Vice interview, McKenty described himself with some pride as the father of relentlessly mocking butthurt metal nerds on the internet. He also called out the middle-class alternative people, who he said are driven by a fundamental desire to be special. You don't have to parse this too closely to see the contempt behind these statements. If you wanted to, you could also read it as classist, considering that McKenty had, by his accounts, a fantastic and presumably lucrative marketing career. But at the same time, it seems like he genuinely hoped people would learn from his experiences, telling Vice, "When I make fun of dumb stuff that the younger generation of kids does, I'm really just making fun of myself, because I definitely would have done the same shit if I was their age in 2012. Using the same Sergeant D pseudonym, McKenty also wrote for heavy metal sites Metal Inquisition and Metal Sucks, where, in the few posts still available, he expresses a lot of contempt for various kinds of music fans. In 2014, he wrote, "The mental gymnastics that music dorks will go through to justify their fickle and arbitrary tastes are never not funny to me." About lovers of the crossover genre of hardcore and metal, he noted, "The fans are irritating enough that it's tempting to write off the entire crossover genre, but don't let a few thousand bad apples spoil it for you." Besides offering sarcastic lifestyle advice, McKenty was also finding more straightforward ways to parlay his love of music into a career. In 2013, he started producing the music and audio channel at online education platform Creative Live, which featured classes taught by professional musicians who explained various DIY production techniques. This work seems to have kept him pretty well connected with the scenes he frequented in his youth.
Here's a songwriting panel that I hosted at the APMAs back then with Buddy from Census Fail, Soupy from The Wonder Years, Cody from Set It Off, and Lizzie from Hailstorm. That was fun.
Soon after, he started collaborating with another online education platform, URM Academy, which similarly offers metal musicians educational opportunities via classes with famous producers who teach everything from recording to mastering. McKenty became URM's full-time director of marketing in 2017, where, according to his LinkedIn, he still works. Not sure how up-to-date that is. But most importantly for our purposes, in 2015, he launched the Punk Rock MBA Facebook group with the intention of bringing career, business, and life advice to the DIY community. So how would people respond when McKenty took his wisdom to YouTube? That's where the story really gets interesting. McKenty established a YouTube channel for the Punk Rock MBA in 2016 and started uploading content in 2017, though he says he's taken down the videos from his first active year. The first video still available, from back in March of 2018, features McKenty and his friend, music producer Joey Sturgis, offering financial advice.
If you grew up poor like we did, we want to help you understand that it is 100% possible for you to achieve financial freedom.
This is radically different from the content McKenty would become best known for, so it helps to think where his head was at. In his bombshell interview with Lee, McKenty said that despite his success in working for multinational corporations, he was hitting a professional roadblock because he didn't have a prominent internet platform.
I'd done a lot of this stuff that I was pretty proud of, and I think anybody would tell you that I was good at my job, but nobody knew who I was, and nobody cared.
His goal, he said, was to show that he could build an entire brand from scratch, a sort of personal proof of concept. However, as the channel gained popularity, his media interviews articulate a more sincere, if pretty vague, mission statement for his work. In 2020, he told Decibel magazine, "My goal is to help anybody watching or listening to get a little closer to whatever their goals are, whether that's getting more people to listen to their band, understand a little bit more about themselves, start their own business, or just be more comfortable with who they are as a human." My personal guess is that his impetus for starting the channel was mainly a strategy for building his brand, but also partially an authentic attempt to make money talking about stuff that he was already knowledgeable about. From what I can see, his true interest was marketing, and he geared that towards musicians and music fans because that was the world that he was comfortable in. The Punk Rock MBA's earliest available videos make for an eclectic mix. There's mental health and addiction advice for musicians, commentary on the changing economics of the music industry, and tons of hyper-focused marketing lessons for aspiring bands. He's clearly trying to sell himself as a consultant, taking the MBA part of the title seriously.
As I said, you can potentially reach way more people with email than you can with social media.
McKenty's marketing prowess seems just as important for him as his love for music, as indicated by the books about Google Analytics featured in his background. In his interview with Lee, McKenty said plainly that he originally intended to make a channel about marketing for musicians, but nobody in his YouTube orbit seemed to want to click on those videos. Instead, his earliest offerings of lifestyle and business advice averaged around 25,000 views. This is actually pretty good for a channel like that. When your main goal is selling a service, it's more about reaching the right people than reaching as many people as possible. The one outlier, both in subject matter and popularity, was his third available video, 5 Bands That Changed My Life, which as of recording has 127,000 views. In it, he talks about bands he seems to genuinely love.
So here Gorilla Biscuits comes along. This is a message that I can relate to. Like, they have the song Start Today, which is about basically like overcoming procrastination and laziness. It's essentially a hardcore song about productivity.
It's worth noting that even in a video about music that changed his life, he still spends a lot of time focusing on the way that his favorite bands chose to market themselves, rather than the emotional effects of the music. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but this is interesting, given the fact that his favorite music subcultures are historically pretty hostile to any version of selling out for mainstream credibility. This dissonance will remain a theme in his work. As the Punk Rock MBA's library grew, and as views on the channel's lifestyle advice stagnated, McKenty started to figure out what people actually did care about. In September of 2018, 3 of his videos outperformed the others, becoming the first to rake in 250,000 views. They did so in near succession. The videos were Bring Me the Horizon, How Did They Get So Big, Fall Out Boy, How Did They Get So Big, and A Day to Remember, How Did They Get So Big. Sensing a theme here? In these videos, McKenty was not hesitant to assert his own taste. For example, he admits right out the gate not liking Bring Me the Horizon, but he says he believes their success makes them worthy of study. At other times, he seemed eager to claim his scene credentials.
In this episode, we're going to talk about a band that is especially interesting to me, Fall Out Boy. And the reason why they're so interesting to me is because they're from my graduating class of hardcore. I don't know any of them personally, but we have a lot of mutual friends. I remember seeing them around back in the day.
The How Did They Get So Big format was an early slam dunk for the channel. In these 10 to 11 minute videos, McKenty starts by giving a quick Cliff Notes history of the band, then he goes into a listicle style analysis of the different reasons he credits for their success. From A Day to Remember's use of classic pop music song structure to the style and substance of My Chemical Romance. Though he didn't make a huge library of videos in this exact format, you can see the voice that he would become known for coming into its own. McKenty built on this success by experimenting with other replicable formulas. One series about the death of specific genres yielded 2 of his most watched videos of all time, What Killed Death Metal and What Killed Nu Metal. He would start by defining the genre, usually in a way that casually revealed his extensive knowledge about the topic.
If you're not familiar with easycore, basically it's just pop punk with breakdowns. The name came from a Newfound Glory tour back in 2008 that they did with A Day to Remember and some other bands called the Easycore Tour. Easycore, not hardcore, get it?
Early on, he seemed to love inserting personal anecdotes, which had the added effect of lending him credibility. Whether purposeful or not, McKenty assured the audience that he wasn't an encyclopedia, he was a genuine fan.
If you saw Dillinger back then, you know what I'm talking about. Their shows were a legitimate threat to your physical safety. I loved watching Ben just not give a single fucking swing his pointy ass ESP guitar around and catch people in the head. You'd see people walk out of there bleeding like it was a G.G. Allen show.
His videos would often break a subgenre down into hyper-specific eras, even if each only lasted a few years, and the intricacy of his knowledge was typically on full display. The format started out almost inherently nostalgic, a sort of autopsy for the kind of music McKenty thinks is over. Later, perhaps struggling to find new content to mine, he'd branch out to cover the death of non-subgenre topics like Guitar Hero. McKenty later repackaged the same conceit of breaking down a band's specific trajectory to fame in formats like The Strange History Of.
And along with those 2 bands, as well as AFI, I think that they are the ones who bridge that gap between the 90s quote-unquote real emo scene and the mainstream, creating that explosion of 2000s mall emo that would come along a couple years later, especially with their next album, Define the Great Line.
He also pretty openly pandered to the power of enraged internet fans with a series on most hated bands.
I would say people probably hated Broken Side the most out of all the crunkcore bands, but Millionaires were not far behind.
How did Pro forget about Blood on the Dance Floor? Still, even as he chased views, you can still see remnants of the passion that inspired his zine making in videos like Deathcore Bands That Should Have Been Bigger, which also became a replicable format in which McKenty spotlighted lesser-known musicians who he thought deserved more attention. It's worth noting, however, that while the video about underground bands he loved got only 160,000 views, a video from his most hated bands, which featured household names like Nickelback and Fall Out Boy, raked in over 500,000 views. Spoiler alert, he said most people don't actually hate Fall Out Boy. We can put down the pitchforks. Largely off those kinds of successes, the Punk Rock MBA hit 50,000 subscribers by January 2019 and would top 100,000 soon after. In his videos from this era, the comment section feels mostly like a clubhouse for fans to gush about their favorites, reflect on their youthful discovery of metal or punk, and to agree or disagree with McKenty's hot takes, or each other's. But you can see the genuine appreciation fans felt for how comprehensive McKenty's musical knowledge was. One fan noted that he even listened to country. Even when they weren't familiar with the genres he was discussing, fans said that his videos evoked joy and nostalgia in equal measures, and you can see hints of parasociality beginning to form. Though there's some sarcasm or disagreement, you don't see a ton of explicitly malicious reactions. But fan culture is always one misstep away from turning on you. For example, on A Strange History of Green Day, one fan compliments McKenty's thoroughness, admitting that he was ready to rage comment when he thought McKenty forgot to mention Green Day's songwriting prowess, but expressing relief that his point was eventually covered. As for his lifestyle-focused content, it seems to have pretty much been phased out after his Why Musicians Are Poor video had a mediocre performance in November of 2019. McKenty would later explain that he was simply responding to what his viewers seemed to want to watch, rather than making what he genuinely wanted to make. This is an example of interest analog, a phenomenon in which creators are pushed by platform algorithms into producing a certain niche of content, often not what they were initially passionate about. But surely nothing bad can happen when a creator starts having to make content they're not excited about, right? Finnegan would soon have his own story about the perils of YouTube success, and the inevitable cynicism that follows. In 2019, as the Punk Rock MBA was really taking off and pivoting away from educational marketing content, McKenty started a second channel under his full name. This was ostensibly meant to be a platform to share his knowledge about business, marketing, and personal branding. Though he started it 2 years after his main channel, it's worth noting that the Finn McKenty channel today has over 600 videos. That's over 30% more than what's available on the Punk Rock MBA. And that's despite the Finn McKenty channel only having 150,000 subs to the Punk Rock MBA's more than 600,000. Given how YouTube revenue works, it's interesting that McKenty focused so much energy on a channel that never seemed to fully get off the ground like his first one. Like I said earlier, it's very possible that his eponymous channel made just as much revenue by reaching people who became clients rather than reaching the masses. I have no way of knowing for sure. I'm not gonna go too deep on the second channel because frankly, it never had nearly as big a footprint as the Punk Rock MBA, but it's worth noting that McKenty's fight with the YouTube algorithm seems to have played out almost identically, though the channel is different and more focused on Twitch highlights. Some of his first videos there had topics like my 7-part Instagram strategy or I went back to school at 25, is college worth it? Given his ultimate desire to convince music fans to consume his marketing content, he made some programming choices that actually seem kind of savvy. For example, he offered investing basics for scene kids and metalheads in early 2021, including Robinhood and GameStop in the title to ride the media wave of the moment. Ironically, his first success on the second channel was a video listicle of songs that didn't hold up, or did, featuring tracks by mainstream artists like Paramore and Limp Bizkit. That's the reality of being an internet personality though. It's hard to be known for more than one thing, which is too bad because despite the videos being less catered to my personal interests, the few videos that I've seen on the second channel always felt more genuine in a way that you have to see to understand. Still, McKenty was flying high, being quoted in mainstream journalism outlets like the New York Times and CNN as an expert on everything from Sum 41 to which gadgets to buy for your home office. Even as he reluctantly pivoted into music-centric content, his worldview remained heavily invested in the power of branding. For example, his video about Slipknot argued that it was their image and brand rather than explicitly their music that accounts for their massive fame. He also credits Fall Out Boy's frontman Pete Wentz's strong entrepreneurial spirit for the band's dominance. Billboard framed a glowing interview with McKenty around his channel's successful fusion of his twin passions for music and marketing advice. In that interview, he reiterates his frustration with rock's branding problem. He says it's not a songwriting contest. Your job is to entertain an audience, and your music is one part of that, but it's not the only way you do it. I think contrary to what a lot of metal fans believe, image is especially important in metal, and always has been. Sometimes he drops all pretenses of analyzing the music, focusing entirely on various artists' promotional tactics. He frequently praised marketing strategies that in any of the scenes he originally cared about would identify as selling out.
As another example, Blink-182. MTV was the platform that built that band, no question about it. They were on TRL all the time, they did every awards show, like they played the MTV Spring Break specials, they were on Made, Travis even had his own reality show.
He seems absolutely convinced that rock music's decline is solely an image problem.
I believe in the power of reality TV as a marketing vehicle, so in this video I'm going to show you why my personal favorite one of those shows, Rock of Love, starring Bret Michaels of Poison, is amazing and great.
But despite sometimes being light on actual musical analysis, he found success by leaning into formats that were replicable and reliably attracted views, aka the ones with band names and familiar faces in the title and thumbnail. In one series, he reviewed the history of various bands who had outlived their moment in the sun.
I think that their lyrics are more about Scott struggling to be the person that he wanted to be or felt like he should be, more so than trying to tell other people what to do.
Sprinkled throughout, you can hear some grievances aimed at the audience.
Maybe instead of talking about how great Bam is, I should be blaming him for popularizing black metal and therefore creating all these like angry black metal elitists that show up on my comments and call me names.
These grievances would come to a head in the channel's final days. Toward McKenty's later years, he was still relying on these branded formats, even when they weren't necessarily the best way to package the given subject matter. For example, his video, The Strange History of Blink-182, is one of his most watched of all time, despite this unremarkable anecdote apparently qualifying as a weird fact.
And that is also when they became Blink-182 rather than just Blink, because it turned out there's some other band called Blink from Scotland who apparently own the name and threatened to sue them.
Which is interesting lore, but it's something that's happened to so many bands like Fun and Dinosaur Jr. The rest of the video chronicles a pretty unweird path to success for the band. Meanwhile, his last choice of video for the Who Killed series from late 2023 analyzes what killed the movie soundtrack, which feels like the precise opposite of the very narrowly focused subgenres that McKenty had initially created the deep dive format to discuss. He doesn't credit writers in his video description like I do, but I feel like this couldn't possibly have been written by him.
Let's look at the soundtrack for Barbie, which is probably the most recent example of a soundtrack that really felt like it was something special. And again, going back to this idea where the blueprint for a great soundtrack is pairing an important moment in music with an important moment for film.
My man, did you drink the gay juice or something? McKenty goes on to detail how much money Barbie made in the box office and how it was universally beloved by critics, which fans of any subculture could tell you is hardly the qualifier for what makes something great. No hate to the Barbie movie though, I haven't seen it, so I won't judge. McKenty has said in the past that he likes pop music, but it just feels plain surreal to hear a guy who started out trying to get people to listen to bands like Animosity, 18 Visions, and Demolisher argue that the Barbie soundtrack is among the best in recent years. Did you even see the Eddie Munson scene in Stranger Things 4? To come back to a point I started out with, this may be why McKenty's content always felt lazy to me. Or at the very least, if not lazy, pretty paint by numbers. Each video was about the same length, regardless of how much time the subject demanded, and it felt pretty obvious to me that pure passion was not guiding his content creation, especially when he talked about a subject that I'm personally interested in, like, say, Weezer. Being a huge fan of this band, I clicked on his Strange History of Weezer video when it came out in March of 2024. Though he covered the band's early career with relative attention to detail, if not any particularly deep insight, once he hits the year 2009, you get the sense that he's running up against the video's time limit. And so he just waves off some of the band's most important moments in recent years by saying,
I'm not going to go over the rest of their albums in detail one by one because there's something like 8 more they released after this, and I don't want this video to be an hour long, but essentially it's more of the same. A bunch of straightforward, catchy rock albums that did well commercially, but keep disappointing fans.
And to do this is not only lazy, but it's wrong. He's leaving out one of the most interesting parts of their career, where they put out their best work since the 90s and reconnected with their original fans in a heartfelt and somewhat apologetic way. He also said they were never emo, which is an entirely different gripe, but come on, they're one of the biggest influences in all of emo. And you just can't do a history video where you skip over important parts of a band's history. You can't squeeze 30 plus years of history from a Weezer or Green Day into the same runtime as a video about a band with 3 albums. Because the part you skipped over might not seem important to you, but to some fan viewing the video, it's his or her absolute favorite, and that fan is going to be disappointed. As a creator myself, I understand that this is a business, and it can help to have a standard product that you can produce at a flat rate, but when you don't show any respect for the subject matter of your content, you not only sound lazy, but you're disrespecting the audience who cares about the topic. Rest assured, here on Pumpkin Metal, I'm going to be doing my videos the right way, by analyzing the band's entire history. No arbitrary time limits, no skimping on the details. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you can stay plugged in with your favorite bands. Anyway, as I reflected on McKenty's abrupt departure, I wondered, were my suspicions that he was phoning it in right all along, or was there something more to this story? Shortly after posting his lackluster Weezer history that I'll never get over, on April 19th, 2024, McKenty posted a video to his second channel called These People Really, Really Hate Me, in which he admitted that negative feedback to his recent work had left him really drained.
It is true that I am very burned out, and I think these people have some valid points.
He agreed with criticism that his videos had become more rote and less interesting, and that he was stuck in a millennial nostalgia niche that he was getting super bored of. He basically described exactly what I earlier called interest analog. The gist is, once you establish success on a platform with content about a given topic, the algorithm and your audience punish you when you deviate from that topic, even just a little bit. As a result, creators get stuck trying to find anything new to say about the specific subject matter that they're actually allowed to discuss. McKenty tries to rationalize his obvious exhaustion and boredom like this.
If that means I have to make a video about Papa Roach and saliva or whatever, then cool. You know, my job is to make content that people like.
He clearly had a lot of grievances about his audience's taste, going into granular detail about the way his favorite videos he made always performed badly or were usually his most disliked, and how the videos he hated making always ended up performing well. This gives us even more context about why his content was declining in quality. Everyone who runs a YouTube channel has to worry about clicks, but listening to McKenty talk, it feels like clicks were the only thing he was thinking about. This explains why he seemed to be trying to strike a more mainstream tone by, among other things, showering the Barbie soundtrack soundtrack with compliments. McKenty also talks quite extensively about how much negative comments affect him and ends by saying that he's not sure how much longer he can keep making the same content. A week and a half later, he posted a second video on a similar subject on the Punk Rock MBA, saying he hadn't expressed himself well the first time and he didn't mean to sound so whiny, his words. He still sounded pretty down about his work though, saying that when he put his true personality and honest opinions into his videos, they performed badly. He described how grueling it was to endure so many negative comments and says that as his channel was getting bigger, he started losing sleep to panic attacks for the first time in his life. It all speaks to a golden rule I know many fellow creators try to follow. Unless your skin is as thick as a rhino's, don't read the mean comments. He ends on a slightly sad but potentially hopeful note by asking the audience what kind of content they thought he should be making.
If you guys have any ideas on something I could do that is perhaps a little bit outside of the realm of like this millennial rock nostalgia stuff, if there's any way that I could cover new music, that would be really cool.
One Reddit user responded to his pleas by posting, "Per his request in this video, let's discuss how much Finn McKenty sucks and how wrong all his opinions are." Though some users defended him in the comments, it's clear McKenty opening up and being vulnerable wasn't going to silence the haters. Around the same time, he posted a podcast to the Punk Rock MBA Spotify called My Plan for Quitting YouTube. He doesn't actually announce that he's leaving the platform behind, but he acknowledges that his eventual departure is inevitable.
My channel's not going to last forever. I know my audience has like very specific expectations, and like I can't keep talking about that stuff for the rest of my life because it's like, what more do I have to say about this? I think you just have to understand that it's not going to last forever and have a plan for what you're going to do when that eventually runs its course.
McKenty continued posting for another 4 months, but his head clearly wasn't in the game. Even the title of one of his last videos, The Rise and Fall of Sugar Ray, Sugar Gay, just feels incredibly lazy, and unfortunately his analysis wasn't much better.
Of course, you instantly see what a great frontman Mark is. Incredibly good looking, super charismatic, that just instantly shines through, as well as the fun-loving party kind of atmosphere that the band would become known for.
Also, I can't be the only one who noticed that almost all of the different series on his channel were basically just rebrands of the same thing. Rise and Fall, The Strange History of, The Unexpected Rise of, The Evolution of, How Did They Get So Big? Like, what is the functional difference between any of these? His final video went up on August 26, 2024, called Rock and Metal Are Boring Now, and This Is Why. And it feels like an appropriate swan song for a creator who was deeply bored of his own work.
Haven't we just kind of completely explored the limits of rock? Like, you're never gonna write a better blue-collar anthem than Bruce Springsteen. You're never gonna write a better pop-punk song than Green Day or Blink. And I don't think you'll ever do anything more extreme than, say, AC or Last Days of Humanity. So what's left to do? I would say not much, if anything. So if it's time to say goodbye to rock, well, I think it had a pretty damn good run.
And that was his final word. He stopped posting after that video, going dark without any explanation. It wasn't until that scandalizing interview with Jesse Lee on December 12, 2024 that he officially quit the YouTube game. And that's when things really took a turn. He sounded genuinely upset back in April when he talked about how his work was being received and seemed to be sincerely searching for a way to branch out and explore more topics. But by December, he sounds so overwhelmingly cynical that it's actually pretty staggering. He claims that he never really intended to actually be a YouTuber. He merely wanted to understand it from a marketing perspective. He also reiterated that he had relied on Wikipedia for all of his research.
You just seemed like such a wealth of knowledge. Like you knew so much about the topics you were talking about that I was like, dude, I can't make content. Like I don't know like the encyclopedia history of all these bands, but like,
well,
you
neither do I.
Like,
it's just like literally look it up on Wikipedia. I don't know. Like I've never listened to System of a Down in my life.
He also called his critics smooth-brained, low-vibration people. Just like how he kept trying to get his YouTube audience interested in marketing content, McKenty spends a lot of the interview trying to pivot the conversation back to his real love.
I'm much more interested and knowledgeable about SaaS than I am music. So if you like SaaS, hit me up.
If you've liked his metalcore videos, you're gonna love his opinion about SaaS.
For the unfamiliar, SAS, formerly known as Statistical Analysis System, is a software suite for advanced analytics that can mine, alter, manage, and retrieve data and perform statistical analysis on it. That's a pretty big genre shift from overanalyzing mathcore. Also during the interview, the former scene kid encouraged people to follow him on LinkedIn, probably the least punk rock platform in the history of the internet. No hate towards LinkedIn though. I've never gone on it. He argues that LinkedIn is now the best place to build an online platform because you can make a decent living off of an audience of just 10,000 followers, which actually matches up pretty well with what I was saying earlier about his Finn McKenty channel needing to reach the right customers rather than the masses. To say all this left people angry and baffled would be a huge understatement, but how exactly did his fans and his critics react to this bombshell expose of McKenty's true motivation? Nobody does drama quite like YouTube, and Finn McKenty's shocking announcement caused a predictable and immediate firestorm response from fans and fellow creators, especially within the various subcultures he covered. Responses ran the full emotional gamut. A lot of people were simply baffled. Obviously, plenty of fans were furious, calling him a poser and a grifter. One Reddit user said his retirement was the greatest gift I could have gotten this Xmas. A lot of people think his comments are simply not true, and that he claimed that the channel had been a grift because he was bitter about the criticism over his recent work. Meanwhile, one writer at Tedium blamed the tyranny of the YouTube algorithm more than McKenty himself for his selling out and becoming disillusioned. YouTubers in a similar space also expressed a wide variety of views.
Kind of weird that you would make your whole 7 years of your life about music and building a brand around it just to get the bag.
I wouldn't say that this channel and Finn's content didn't come from a place of love, at least a little bit. It just wasn't a love for music.
It's two things. People that already don't like Finn, for whatever reason, are using this as leverage to not like him more. And they're also using it to make content. We're making content about it right now.
It's one of them things, I massively disagree with a lot of his opinions, but it's the internet, people. People are gonna disagree with you. For f***'s sake, people disagree with me all the time. That doesn't stop me posting content.
Finn was obviously knowledgeable to a degree and is probably much smarter than I am, although seems to lack the humanity that's required to understand the idea of having passion for something without financial incentive.
You're doing it in such a blunt way to your viewers that appreciated whatever you were providing to them, and to just state that I just looked at you as dollar bills is really degrading.
Channels like Wyatt X Him thought that McKenty's comments were particularly degrading to those who consumed his content in good faith, under the assumption that they were listening to the opinions and insights of a true fan. Meanwhile, others don't think his statements completely delegitimize his work, but that they do reveal his true passion. The comment section of Anthony Fantano's video response is particularly entertaining. One person joked that we shouldn't have expected anything different from a marketing major. Another commenter expressed the pain some fans might have felt, comparing it to writing your friends a goodbye letter that says, "I never liked you anyways." Others were offended on behalf of the musicians that McKenty covered. Some felt victorious, celebrating the fact that McKenty had never liked their favorite music anyway. And multiple users were quick to point out the irony that McKenty, who they believe always behaved like a gatekeeper, would ultimately wind up exposing himself as the true fake music fan. While I do think it's entertaining to see his whole community blowing up and feel that he kind of deserves it, I hope his fans aren't too beat up about it. If you got something out of his content, no matter what his intentions were, there's nothing that can change that. All commercial entertainment is made with the purpose of making money, whether it's the main purpose or not, and just because it wasn't a passion project doesn't mean that it can't be well done. All I'm saying is that if you liked his videos, I don't think you have to feel bad about it. And if you're still a reeling refugee, maybe stick around here. But it's no surprise that people are angry at him. Dedicating hours of your life to consuming someone's videos is kind of an act of trust, especially when there's an infinite amount of other content you could be watching. While I don't personally think this invalidates his whole career, I do think people feeling betrayed is understandable. They felt like they were pawns being used so that Finn could achieve some unrelated career goal. On the other hand, there are some creators who have expressed understanding for what McKenty went through during his YouTube career, leading to reflection on that well-documented phenomenon of creator burnout. Quitting YouTube due to burnout has become enough of a trope that parodies of "I'm quitting" videos have become a genre in their own right. But McKenty's departure is certainly an interesting case. Growing up, I always wondered why YouTubers would just disappear and stop posting without making a goodbye video or explaining why they're gone or what they're doing now. But as I became a creator myself, I came to know some of these people and eventually learned the answer. They burned themselves out so badly that they could not even find the motivation to just turn on the camera and make the "I'm quitting" video. From what I understand, their brain will not allow them to record anymore in the same way that an addict's brain will not let them stop using. The mental block is just that strong. I don't know Finn McKenty personally, but I do have friends in the music content space who do. And the alleged story is that he tried to sell the channel and he probably could have gotten decent money for it, but then he was unwilling to stay on for just a few more videos in order to transition to a new host. And that's pretty telling. What makes this story unique is that he could have just ridden off into the sunset and left his audience in the dark like so many have before him, but instead he decided to take this podcast interview in order to basically tell his audience, "You've been punked." He almost seemed determined to completely tear down the image that he'd invested so much time into. The thing is, I don't really believe him when he says he never cared about music in the first place, especially after looking at some of his early work where he rattles on excitedly about his friends in the underground music scene or his experience as a kid at concerts. I think, like most things with McKenty, the truth about his love of music lies somewhere in the middle. It seems like he wanted to start a marketing channel and use his genuine love of music to give it a unique angle. Then he was pushed by his growing audience into making only music-centric content. But in order to please the algorithm, he found himself making music content that he clearly wasn't as passionate about. As he got bored and started phoning in the work, fans noticed and reacted, and this upset him. In his side channel videos, he expresses plenty of bitterness and resentment, and in his interview with Jesse Lee, he may just be letting out the rest of that lingering hostility. So why did he claim he never listened to the music? My guess is that he just wanted to put the nail in the coffin, turn his own audience against him so that they'll stop bothering him about coming back to YouTube, something he clearly has no interest in doing. Of course, I'm just speculating, but I think my explanation tracks with the information that we have. Weirdly enough though, if you look at what he's doing now on LinkedIn, where he claims to be making enough to support his family of 3, he's largely selling his consultant credentials based on the YouTube platform that he just set on fire. He's selling his services as an influencer and expert in the art of growing your brand, and even offers advice about building an audience. He curiously chose to leave out the part about quitting and giving that audience the middle finger. In one recent post, he wrote, "Whatever you do, don't quit. The secret to being a disgustingly rich and famous influencer like me is simple. Just keep going. That's it." Guess we don't always take our own advice. But what do you guys think? Was Finn McKenty finally being his authentic self, or was this just another marketing stunt? Let me know what you think, if you feel like it. Stay plugged in by subscribing to Pumpkin Metal for more than just Punk and Metal, let the bell toll for notifications, and I will catch you in the next one. Unless I sell out.